Thank you. What fun to be here. Do I click? Yes, there's my name. Good. There we go. So for the next few minutes, we're going to talk about sustainable gardens and sustainable gardeners. So what is sustainable? In circumstances like Manhattan Beach, before people were here, this is what the landscape might have looked like. This is the local native landscape. These plants, animals, and microbes co-evolved to the specifics of climate and geology to be perfectly suited. And of course, obviously need no gardeners. There's a wide variety of landscapes in California. These landscapes in these images are of the plant communities that would have been found in this area, and the botanists call them coastal strand and coastal sage scrub. So we got rid of that. Now what? Now we're gardening. So before we talk about the mechanics of sustainable gardening, we need to talk a little bit about the aesthetics. Plants that are sustainable here in Southern California, in a place like Manhattan Beach, are plants that, or in any location, are plants that can thrive in those conditions without additional help. Now, you guys all know that we rarely get rain between the months of April and October. So what that means is the aesthetic of your landscape is completely different than the aesthetics that you would see in the middle of August in Connecticut. So our sustainable gardens here in Southern California look different. They are a garden that has a sense of place. Now, I click through these. What season is that? Spring, right? It's spring. Okay, I got more spring and more spring. How come I have no pictures of summer? Because we never took any. I mean, that tells you something. Okay, it's a completely different look to your landscape than the irrigated kinds of gardens that we have come to expect here in Southern California. So what makes a garden sustainable? Inputs like water, fertilizer, and pesticides are minimized. The Manhattan Beach Botanical Garden, we use no fertilizer and we use no pesticides. We do occasionally irrigate, and the irrigation water that we use comes from the reclamation plant in El Segundo, the water reclamation plant in El Segundo, just like all the green space in Manhattan Beach and throughout the South Bay. So when we do water, we're actually not using your drinking water. The outputs in a sustainable garden, this is a definition, the outputs like waste and runoff are also minimized. Now, for us, the only waste we have is we have some green waste that we send out to some degree. And I'm going to tell you how we offset that in a minute. And the other thing is we do occasionally irrigate, and when we do irrigate, our irrigation system has been made so that it does not apply more water than the soil can absorb. That's key. You can do that too. So all of your irrigation systems could be fixed so that they did not have runoff. Oh, and we have a composting toilet. In other words, be a lazy gardener. So the Lazy Gardener's Toolkit is the same as the Sustainable Gardener's Toolkit. The most important thing about a sustainable garden is to thoughtfully consider existing conditions. So you need to stop and think about what is it that I'm going to be able to achieve with the inputs that I'm going to be willing to give to this location. That's critical. Now, you can, when you go to choose your plants, you can use plants that are native to California. You could use plants that are not native to California. Perhaps it's most appropriate to use plants that are native to places that have climates like ours. Now, here in California, California is a big state. We have an incredibly diverse flora. So the plants that are growing on the flanks of Mount Shasta, or the plant that's growing in the understory of the redwood forest, or in the depths of Death Valley, is not, just because it's California native, be the plant for your garden. And that's amazingly important to remember. And you hear a lot of people talking about California natives, and plants don't know political boundaries. All right, now, I think this is the key right here. Okay, so plant selection, you guys probably already knew that part. But I think this is the key. Okay, I'm going to do my front yard. I'm going to take out the lawn. I'm going to put new plants in. This is what my neighbor did. My neighbor did an extensive remodel. And after they were completed with that, they redid their front yard to be without lawn. On the day of final inspection, the inspector came, signed off the house, but just kept saying, when are you going to put the grass in? When are you going to put the grass in? Because the inspector could not understand that this was a fully landscaped front yard, because they had planted their plants to have enough space to grow to their eventual size without impediments. That's what makes it sustainable. You have to choose plants properly, and you have to have plants that can have enough space to grow to the size they need to be. This is a huge challenge in our little postage stamp beach gardens. So they've planted one plant here, which is a plant that's going to be about 8 feet in diameter. So it's planted there. And the next plant is going to be planted over here. And I have a 3-foot thing here, and a 3-foot thing here, and a 3-foot thing here. And I have a lot of mulch in between. That's a little hard to understand. And they're done. It's like our landscape is now done because this is sustainable. These plants can grow to the size they need to be. And then we think the key is mulch. So the Manhattan Beach Botanical Garden, we joke, we are the cult of the mulch. This is our religion. So I'm thinking about the blue zones, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe that's our religion, because we do joke about it being our religion. We believe it's the key to sustainable gardening. So this is our mulch, with some of our volunteers on top of it. We take green waste from tree trimming, local tree trimming company, and he dumps it off for us for free, because of course otherwise he'd pay to dispose of it. So we take this big load of stuff and we spread it around our garden. It's important, if you decide to do this, that you use tree waste and not waste from other kinds of garden environments. You don't want lawn clippings, and you probably don't want shrubs, because you have the risk shrub clippings, because you have the risk of having pesticide contamination with that. So why is mulch important? Okay, so we got one. It keeps down weeds. So if we put it on the recommended 4 to 6 inches thick, it prevents weed seed from germinating. Okay, so that's huge if you're going to be sustainable and low work, right? It also, of course, retains moisture. You probably already guessed that. Now, the one that surprised us at the Manhattan Beach Botanical Garden is that we actually, when we started off, we didn't anticipate that we would not be using fertilizer. But we've used these mulch piles when we were looking. I was rehearsing this with my husband, and he looked at that mulch pile, and he said, think about how many piles of that mulch that you have put into your garden over these years. We've put, I can't even think. I mean, we've been working on the garden. We've probably been putting mulch on for 15 years. So we probably put 5, 6, 7 piles like that per year of mulch on there. Where does it go? It biodegrades and goes into the soil, providing the fertility that our plants need. So that's huge. Now, biodegrading. How does that happen? And this is another really key thing about mulch. This mulch layer is an active ecosystem. There's all kinds of animals and plants and microbes of who knows what kind that are in there breaking down the organic matter. And when you add to the diversity of an ecosystem, you make it more stable. So it's a huge piece of your sustainable garden, hence the cult of the mulch. All right, but here's the big problem. In order to have a sustainable garden, you have to have sustainable gardeners. There's been many projects, you guys have seen them too, schoolyards, parks, other public places, where well-intended individuals have come through and said, we're going to plant a sustainable garden here. We're going to remove the turf, we're going to remove these shrubs, and instead we're going to plant these California natives or other perfectly adapted plants. And they make no plan for maintenance. The problem is that if you make no plan for maintenance, your garden will fail, because it is still a garden. So people approach us all the time to talk about this, and it's like, unless you can have an organization that will help maintain the garden, whether it be a paid organization or an unpaid organization, your garden is going to fail. The thing that makes our garden sustainable is our gardeners. So we're an all-volunteer group, and we're all donation-driven. So we're not getting money or professional assistance from anybody, but we have a bunch of people who show up on Fridays, and you can too, and we do our gardening tasks. We're there Friday mornings. We have, we pull weeds, we spread mulch, we do whatever, prune things. These are our long-term volunteers. They're there every week. Everybody's not there every week, but we have a good group every week. And the other thing we do is we have short-term projects as well, where we do projects with local scout groups, like a Boy Scout Eagle project. We've done several Eagle projects. We just recently finished doing a Girl Scout Gold project, which was to plant a succulent garden. So that allows us to both broaden our message and exposure and cultivate volunteerism in the community. Sometimes we get a long-term volunteer out of that, like one of the parents of the Scouts comes and joins us, which has happened. All right, the Manhattan Beach Botanical Garden, we have 17 years experience. Hasn't all been pretty, but we've learned some things. So I'm going to go through these quickly. I just threw some ideas up here. Obviously, grassroots organizations like ours are formed by passionate individuals. We get long-term accountability by our agreement with the city. We had to sit in the office of the Parks and Rec director and say, we solemnly swear we will not walk away because we fought. So that's where we got it. That's a challenge, though, with any kind of renovation of a public space. How do you get long-term accountability? Now, in our group, we move at a snail's pace. We're all volunteers. We decide to do stuff, and it takes us forever. And part of the reason for that is we make decisions through consensus. So if I have an idea about something I want to do in the garden, I go around and I make sure I talk to all the Friday gardeners. We get it all straightened. I hear what they have to say. They tell me what they have, their input, their venting, that or something else. We have a board of directors. We go through all this so that we can make forward progress. Like is not the idea that we've suggested. May get dropped on the ground and compost for a few years. And then somebody will pick it back up again and we'll move forward. For us, that's the way we do it. We never vote. Now, these are some little pointers about working in all volunteer organizations. Obviously, every volunteer is there to get something personal out of the experience. We don't always know what that is. But just recognize, they have to be getting their needs met. In our group, we think it's very important to keep a positive culture because of that. Now, my next item doesn't go with that positive culture because I say, watch out for martyrs. Okay, my family told me this was way too negative. I need to say, embrace your martyrs. Because, I've been one. Probably many of you have been. When you're working in an all-volunteer group, it's not uncommon to have somebody be very enthusiastically going forward. And they're driving a whole project themselves, and all of a sudden people that are left behind in the wake are going, but wait, you need to do something differently. And you get kind of resentful. So I think that's human nature. I think we've all done it. Just know it's going to happen, realize it's going to happen, help everybody move forward. In a volunteer organization, sometimes you're left in a job forever. I'm never going to get out of being the recording secretary. And sometimes you just have to step out of the job and leave a void there. We coach each other on this. I've volunteered in many different kinds of ways, and we coach each other on creating the void. So step out and say, okay, I'm done doing that. I don't have to be a martyr. Somebody else can step in. And if they don't, sometimes you figure out another way to do it. And of course, continuous recruitment is key for any group. These are sort of restatements in some ways of the same ideas. I'm a mission statement geek. I love a good mission statement. I like the mission statement to be on the agenda at the top so that when anybody brings something up, I can say, okay, that feeds into my agenda, or no, that feeds into my mission statement, or no, that does not feed into my mission statement. I love a mission statement. And of course, that helps you with your long-range planning. I've talked about inclusive processes. Making progress in the regeneration of your group is always very important. And as the king in Alice in Wonderland says, start at the beginning, go to the end, then stop. Sometimes you're done with your project. Sometimes you've completed your mission, and I've completed mine. So I'm going to leave you with one last thought, which I am going to read to make sure I get it the way I intended. Just as the sustainable garden is thoughtfully created to suit the existing conditions, sustainable organizations are thoughtfully created to suit long-term volunteers. Thank you.